to shout action.
Action.
I'm going to start with a quotation from John Keats from his letters. Do you not see how necessary a world of pains and troubles is to school an intelligence and make it a soul? I'm going to talk on suffering today. And I don't just mean like not getting what you want for Christmas. I'm talking about like the kind of experiences that crush your soul and put you through the ringer so you are exhausted. I'm going to use a story to illustrate my point. In 2011, I started dating this guy, and my dad and sister came to visit me in Oregon. And we went out to dinner, and I'll admit I was cranky. I was in the worst mood. I was exhausted. I was stressed out because they were meeting my boyfriend. I was not in a good space. We went out to breakfast, and they're having a nice breakfast. I stepped outside because I was like, I gotta get myself together because I'm going to lose it. I was not okay. And I walked inside, and they're all having a great conversation, and I experienced this moment that was so alarming and scary to me. My psyche split in two. The conscious part of me was on one side observing, and then this other presence came through me and said something so damaging and horrifying to these three people that they all just stopped what they were talking about. They looked at me, and the part that was conscious, that was observing this, was like, this is not a good idea. Why are you saying this? Because this is not you. It was like a break inside me internally. I don't even remember what I said anymore, but my sister said, I'm never visiting you again. My father was like, we're leaving and this is over. And it just caused this devastation, and it is difficult to talk about. Because then I went home and was afraid that I was going insane. And I cried for months, and my sister basically was like, you need serious therapy. So I suffered. I suffered. My heart was in pain. And then I walked the Camino, and I was walking it, and my knee started hurting, so the people at the hostel were like, we'll drop you off at the bus station. You can take the bus over the mountains and avoid it. And I was like, cool. So they dropped me off, and 4 hours later, I'm trying to read the French because I don't speak French. I'm pretty sure it says the bus doesn't come on Wednesday. I think this is Wednesday. So no one would talk to me because no one could speak English. And after 9 hours of I'm like, the bus isn't coming. So I go back to the hostel, and I walk in, and there's this woman, Joanna, from Switzerland. And she and I start talking. We agree to walk together. And very soon, after a day of walking, it's clear she hates Americans. That she thinks we're all trying to force feed her happiness down everyone's throats. Women over 40 should commit suicide because they're irrelevant. And what I'm trying to say is that it was so heavy, and she was so broken and damaged that I was depressed. I also was I don't even know how to handle this, but clearly God made me miss the bus that didn't exist so I could be with her. So we stop, we're at this hostel, and she's going on and on about Americans, and I'm like, I can't take this anymore. So I was like, look, and she was also saying the French were the worst people on the face of the planet. I was like, look, I try to take people how they are one at a time because I've learned that's easiest for me. And she got pissed. She stood up, she kicked her chair over, she yelled at me in front of everyone, and then she went out the door crying. And so everyone else was really scared at that point, and they ran back to the rooms. And I was like, I cannot run away. I can't run away from this. I need to sit here and be present. And while she was gone, I prayed to God, and I'm like, please let me say the right thing. So she came back in, and she's crying, and she says, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I did this. This was totally not me. I'm so apologetic, but Americans still suck. And I'm like, in so many words. And I was like, all right, this is not about me, okay? Let's just sit here. And so I said to her, what you just did really was nothing. I did something once that caused a circle of devastation that pretty much killed everything within 50 miles, okay? And she was like, what? And I said, oh yeah, let me just tell you this story. So I told her about what I'd said to my father, sister, and my boyfriend at the time. And as I told this story, her shoulders got lighter. She had less shame. She felt less terrible about herself, and I see the judgment spill away. and fall away. And even though it was difficult for me to share that story because it's so embarrassing for me, I was like, I can do this for her. And so we made up and we walked a few more days and we got to a larger city. We decided to meet for lunch the next day. And at lunch, she says, I have something for you. And on the Camino, every single person desires a shell. It's called a coquilla, and you put it on your backpack, and it's like a literal shell, and it's the sign of the pilgrim that you've decided to walk with God. And I could not find one of those to save my life. I was like looking everywhere. They were like gone. And so she pulls out a shell, and she says, I found this, and I made it for you. She drilled a hole in it, she looped a rope through it, and she gave it to me. And I was like, wow, thank you. And I put it on my backpack. And because I'm a little slow on the uptake, like 2 days later, I was walking in the middle of the woods, and all of a sudden I realized that I had that experience with my father, sister, and boyfriend so that I could then take Joanna's shame away in that moment. That I had experienced this split in my psyche and felt like I was crazy, and then cried for months over the fact I might be crazy, so that I'd be present for her and convince her that maybe one American was okay, and maybe that God did exist, and that God had given me the shell because I had done a good job. And I was like, you know, I will suffer like that again and again to do that for someone else. I will cry till the cows come home, because that is so much power, and it's so amazing to think you can have an effect on someone that takes away shame and that gives them new life. So suffering is like in every text, every religion, and it's written about by authors. In 1 Peter 4, he says, Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. And of course, Job, right? Everything that is bad that could possibly happen happens to Job. And still he's like, hey, you know, he has leprosy at the end, and he's like, whatever, this is what's supposed to happen. And by the way, I believe in God. He has faith. In the Quran, in this hadith, it says, whatever befalls a Muslim of exhaustion, illness, worry, grief, nuisance, or trouble, even though it may be no more than the prick of a thorn, earns him forgiveness by Allah of some of his sins. And you can see that in Bilal, Muhammad's most trusted advisor, who was tied down to the desert for hours. They were trying to make him renounce his faith.